Me Before You is a movie with Emilia Clarke, Sam Claflin, Jenna Coleman, and Matthew Lewis. True to most British movies, you can't find someone who's not been in either Harry Potter or Doctor Who. And in this case, as with most British media, we hit both. And I get to review a movie that isn't a horror movie or a superhero movie. That's pretty awesome. Content warning. Oh boy, this movie contains some weighty topics: accidents, physical and emotional trauma, suicidal ideation, probably some Doctor Who and Harry Potter and Game of Thrones jokes. If you're sensitive to any of those, skip this one. Thank you. This review, as always, will contain spoilers for Game of Thrones, as though anyone gives a fuck about that anymore, Harry Potter, Doctor Who, and of course, Me Before You. If you haven't seen this movie, I'm probably not going to do it justice. I'm just here to do some stupid jokes and maybe talk about some themes or some shit. So I suggest checking it out and coming back to this review. Definitely do that second part though. Watch it all the way through. My metrics need it. Please? Pretty please? So we open with Sam Claflin as Will Traynor. He's in bed with some hot blonde and they're being very cute together. He goes off to work and is hit by a motorcyclist. From there, we cut to Emilia Clarke as Louisa Lou Clarke. I guess that's a fine name, but it's weird that both of them have basically the same last name. Kind of like how Charlie Sheen just played characters that are also named Charlie, presumably because he's too off his ass high and drunk to remember any other names. The jury's out still on Amelia. Regardless, she's a cashier at some cafe and is very good at talking to people. Very caring and weird and highly manic pixie dream girl. She's got everything. She's got weird clothes, an offbeat style, is very personable, but is just off enough to not quite fit in. She says one of the most baffling things I've ever heard as one of her first lines.
How many in this one?
170 calories.
You did have that one yesterday.
Oh, what about that one then?
220.
But it is less if you eat them standing up.
What the fuck? How? What? How? What? We introduce her family, who is poor and live in a very crowded house. Her sister is Jenna Coleman. So, presumably, whenever she's off screen, she's helping the doctor stop some alien threat. The family encourages Clarke to find a better job, and she goes off to some job finding guy, which I guess is a thing in Britain. Maybe she's a temp and this is a temp agency. That's just now occurring to me. I'm a fucking moron. Apparently, she's tried her hand at a lot of jobs, but none of them panned out because they were not quirky enough. But she finds a listing as a caretaker, and she jumps at the chance because that moolah is too good to pass up. She meets with Janet McTeer as Camilla Traynor and is properly adorkable.
We are talking about complete loss of the legs and very limited use of the arms and the hands. Would that bother you?
Not as much as would bother him, obviously. No, I...
Your previous employer here says you are a warm, chatty, and life-enhancing presence with a lot of potential.
Yes, I paid him.
Camilla reveals that it would be for Will and not her husband, and she hires Clarke on the spot and goes through the details of her new position. Poor Lou looks like a terrified deer in the headlights, and to be honest, I think we've all been there. Just not feeling at all qualified for a job. She meets with Will, who pretends that he can't speak and terrifies the poor girl further.
I'm Lou.
Will.
He then reveals that he's just being an ass.
Hello, Louisa Clarke. I'm Will Traynor.
Counter to the good-looking, clean-shaven man from before, he's a lot shaggier and probably sells weed because of that. We also meet Stephen Peacock as Nathan. He's Will's nurse and does everything physical. I could put a masturbation joke in there, but I'll just let you choose your own. Will is distant and kind of an ass in that fun movie way where he's always sarcastic to her at every chance that he gets. And we get a montage of Will trying to break her spirit and her becoming increasingly miserable. She wants to quit, but Coleman points out that she's far too busy time traveling to help out with family finances and requires Clarke to stay home because she can't do it. Clarke reluctantly agrees. She's also dating Neville Longbottom, who, after slicing up Nagini, apparently became a personal trainer and a bit of an ass. Neville laments that living in a wheelchair would be miserable for him. He wouldn't be able to have sex, and that he just couldn't handle it.
Are you really saying that you'd stick around with me if I was paralysed from the neck down? I don't want someone to stay with me out of pity. I mean, strangers wipe your ass, Jesus. And think of all the things you couldn't do. No more running, no more cycling, no more sex.
He also turned a trip that they were planning on taking together into some kind of chance to do a triathlon, presumably to make sure that he's still fit when another possessed snake tries to kill him again. Clarke is less than thrilled about this, but is frankly kind of a pushover, so she accepts it. Will's ex and former co-worker pay him a visit and reveal that they have started dating. Will is obviously distraught by this, and after they leave, he busts up all of the photos of his previous life that he had been keeping on his desk. Clarke tries to fix the broken frames, and Will tells her that he doesn't want reminders of his old life. She finally goes full Khaleesi on him and reveals that she is in fact the mother of dragons.
I am Daenerys Stormborn, of House Targaryen, of the blood of old Valyria. I am the dragon's daughter.
Both he and I are turned on by this, and he gives in, telling her to put them away where he can't see them all of the time. The next day he orders her to watch a movie with subtitles, which she's never done before because reading is too hard for some people. If reading is not too hard for you, you can check out another rom-com linked down below called Ghostly Bodies for free. She loves the movie and he's finally warmed up to her, which is good because up until now she'd need a dragon's fire breath to keep her warm with the cold shoulder that he's been giving her. They talk about some of the trips that he's taken and how that differs from her, who has widely stayed in the same town. He laments that she's not explored the world and encourages her to do so. And she's like, nah fam, I'd have to burninate the countryside?
Burninating the countryside, burninating the peasants, burninating all the people in the thatched roof cottages!
And that would be a completely batshit and out of character thing to do. Look, I only know like 3 things about Game of Thrones, and like one of which is Khaleesi is hot, and that at the end she goes insane and fucking murders a bunch of civilians. That's it. That's the extent of my knowledge. Will gets a bit sick and loses consciousness for a while. Nathan comes by and helps him out of his funk, and Clarke notices some scars around his wrists, which is a visual shorthand to let us know that he tried to Sudoku himself. When he's conscious again, she tells him some stories from her childhood and reveals that her fursona is a bumblebee.
You like jazz?
She then overhears the trainer parents talking about how he's planning to end his life and gave them 6 months until he was going to go through with it. This breaks Clarke. She cannot handle that. She likes him and wants him to continue and isn't emotionally able to deal with this. She wants to quit again. But Jenna is like, no fam, you have to be off because he's super cute, and besides, I have to be off to be yelled at by a sexy older Scottish alien. I know I shouldn't do accents, but like, sue me, it's my video, fuck you. She decides to listen to her sister's advice and does a bunch of research and makes a bunch of plans. They go to a horse racing thing, and Will does not have a good time because he needs help getting through the mud. Clarke chooses a bad horse that Will had predicted was going to be a bad horse, And this absolute cunt of a fucking receptionist won't allow them to eat at their fancy eatery because they have the world's stupidest fucking policy.
I'm sorry, we can only serve Premier badge holders. The pig in a poke does a nice hog roast in a bomb with applesauce.
You know what, Sharon? You can stick your Premier badge right up your relaxed dining area.
Will is miserable after the fact, but she convinces him later to go to a concert, and they both have a lot of fun.
I just want to be a man who's been to a concert with a girl in a red dress. Just a few minutes more.
Clarke invites him to her birthday party, and he agrees. Her boyfriend was busy presumably looking up plant facts and arrives late.
Amazing. Amazing.
Neville, you're doing it again.
Oh, right, sorry.
Magical water plants of the Highland Lochs.
Moody gave it to me. That day we had tea.
Neville suggests that Will try some training and that'd fix him right up, as though he wouldn't have tried that immediately.
I bet if we got you on a really good fitness regime, you know, there's actually a Swedish study about how you can train muscles to remember. Well, I'm just trying to.
Yeah, well, don't.
I'll bear it in mind.
They give her some gifts. Neville gives her a necklace with his name on it.
I had it made specially.
Oof. Should have gone with gillyweed, dude. But Will gives her the cute bumblebee striped leggings, and she's ecstatic.
Oh my god, I don't believe it! Where did you get that?
It's a secret.
Fucking furry. Neville is obviously jealous of this. She also calls off the trip to Norway because it's evident that Neville is too busy training with a sword to realize that she committed genocide. Look, like I said, I only watched up to like season 2 of Game of Thrones, and I only know like very little about Khaleesi. She has dragons and later uses them to murder people, and that's bad because, well, they're people and don't murder people as a rule. And 2, that plotline apparently came out of fucking nowhere. Apparently. I wouldn't know. I can't stand Game of Thrones. It's a bad show. If you liked Game of Thrones at any point, you're a bad person and you should feel bad about it. Neville tries to win her over, but finds out that she canceled her trip so that she can go on a holiday with Will instead of enjoying one that's a triathlon and maybe some sightseeing or whatever afterwards. They break up finally. Will asks her to go to the wedding of his ex, and they do, and they actually have a pretty good time. Drinking, she sits on his lap, and they go for a spin. The chair must have been worked on by Waterboy's girlfriend, because that thing could fucking go.
Hey, and by the way, I hope you like what I did to y'all lawnmower.
This is going to go very wrong, you know that. Take me into your loving arms. Kiss me under the light.
He gets sick and has to stay in the hospital for a couple of days, but he recovers and they take the trip to an island paradise. It seems almost like her role as a manic pixie dream girl is going to stop him from committing suicide, but he reveals that he still has every intention of killing himself.
I thought that I was changing your mind.
Nothing was ever going to change my mind.
This breaks her heart because they've fallen in love. They return and she quits, and she's just crestfallen about all of this. Her father talks to her and she feels like a failure because she
tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter.
Jenna is back and gives her a bardic speech to convince her that would be right to be with him in the end. She goes off to Switzerland because she's white and just has that kind of money, I guess. And they spend his last days together with his parents. Afterwards, he left her some money to do some traveling and to live life to the fullest, like he always wanted her to do. We cut to her in France, and she's wearing the bumblebee leggings, because again, she's a fucking furry. The core of this movie is that she's a furry. Remember that. I have a friend who is in a wheelchair and hates this movie because he thinks it's telling disabled people that their lives are not worth living, that they should just kill themselves. I do understand how he came to that conclusion. There is a literal thread and through line of that in the movie, mostly expressed by Neville.
Are you really saying that you'd stick around with me if I was paralysed from the neck down? I don't want someone to stay with me out of pity. I mean, strangers wipe your ass, Jesus. I think of all the things you couldn't do. No more running, no more cycling, hey, no more sex.
A lot of people say stupid shit like that about being disabled. I don't live my life in a wheelchair and do not have the life experience necessary to speak with any kind of authority about that. But I don't think that's the point of the movie. Clarke does her best to manic pixie dream girl Will out of wanting to die, but that doesn't work.
I thought that I was changing your mind.
Nothing was ever going to change my mind.
Not because she can't Jesus him back into walking, but because it doesn't deal with the core of the reason Will wants to die.
I get that this could be a good life, but it's not my life. You never saw me before. I loved my life. I can't be the kind of man who just accepts this.
You're not giving it a chance. You're not giving me a chance.
The movie isn't about him being in a wheelchair. Not really, anyway. It is about Will's inability and unwillingness to deal with trauma.
Listen, I know this is not how you would have chosen it, but I can make you happy.
I don't want you to miss all the things that someone else could give you. Selfishly, I don't want you to look at me one day and feel even the tiniest bit of regret. Tonight, being with you is the most wonderful thing you could have ever done for me.
Will is miserable, in part because he's crippled, but more because he doesn't feel like himself anymore. He had lived his life before the accident as a strong, active fellow, and he can't help but feel like he's a shadow of his former self. And he would still want to die if any other trauma had happened to him. Say his parents were killed by muggers, and he might become Batman. A broken man who wants to die. The only reason that he doesn't is because he's too busy punishing other mentally ill people by beating the crap out of them.
I'm a rich kid with issues. Lots of issues.
If his girlfriend had been murdered by a paramilitary group, he'd become the fucking Punisher. If he had been sold into sexual slavery by his brother and found out that he could control dragons, he'd be a genocidal maniac. The emotional trauma that he suffered prevented him from realizing that there is life after the accident, that he can still be valuable, and that he can still be loved and loved. That is the tragedy of this movie. He's too busy being wrapped up in who he used to be and what happened to appreciate the fact that he could be dating Emilia Clarke. #life goals. And the pain and the fact that he's in a wheelchair contributes to that, undoubtedly. But the movie doesn't frame that as the main thrust. It's his inability to process the trauma and the memories of who he used to be that is the main thrust of the film. So that was delightfully heavy. Suicide is such a fun topic to talk about. As I mentioned in the Joker review, which is bad and you shouldn't watch, I suffer from nearly constant pain and have suicidal thoughts a lot, multiple times, every day. I have never been disabled in the sense that I'm in a wheelchair or need crutches, but I do get wanting to die. There are times where it feels inevitable that I'm eventually going to kill myself. The way that I escape that is by keeping myself busy with a bunch of stupid projects, just like this one. Help delay my suicide by a few weeks by suggesting some movies in the comments down below. While you're at it, give this video a like. Share it with your friends. Subscribe so that you can see more pointless references to shows I never finished. Until next time, this is Sean, your suicidal movie reviewer, signing off. Hi, Governor. They're 220 calories, but they're less if you eat them standing up. She jumps on the chance because that moolah is too good to pass up, yo. So I don't know what. Do you like jazz? I sound more like that. Like my expression is more Joker than it is anything else. Do you like jazz? Because she got so far, but in the end, it didn't even matter.